On my birthday, I invited my son and his wife to come over and have the cake I had baked myself, but they chose to dine at an upscale restaurant instead and didn't even ask me to join them. A few hours later, I got a text. "Mom, save us a piece of the cake." I smiled and blew out the candles alone. Later, I learned that when they came back, the house was empty, except for the cake on the table and a handwritten note. Jake later told me they froze when they read it. I was 72 years old when I finally realized my worth in my son's eyes was reduced to a single text asking me to save leftovers. Let me tell you about the day I blew out my candles alone and reignited the flame of self-respect that had been extinguished for decades. April 23rd. I woke up early, just like any other morning, but that day felt different. 72 springs, as my grandmother used to say. She was the one who taught me everything about baking. She would have been proud if she could have seen the cake I baked that morning, a dark chocolate cherry cake, rich and glossy. The recipe was handwritten in her old notebook, the ink slightly shaky from her age, each ingredient carrying its own meaning. Imported cherries were expensive, but I didn't care. How many chances does one get to celebrate their 72nd birthday? The house was filled with the sweet aroma of melting chocolate and rising batter. While waiting for the cake to bake, I opened the cabinet and took out the emerald green tablecloth my mother had left me. She had embroidered tiny ivory flowers in each corner. I touched the fabric softly, my heart tightening. I wondered if anyone would ever cherish this after I was gone. I spread the tablecloth on the porch table. The pearl-colored candles I had bought from the fancy store downtown were 3 times pricier than the regular ones, but their glow was softer, warmer. I took out 2 porcelain plates reserved only for special occasions and folded the napkins neatly. Everything was ready by around 5 p.m. I called my son Jake, 45 years old, his hair now showing faint traces of gray, still with that tilted smile he had as a boy. "Jake, I just finished the cake. Would you and Emily like to come over for some? Maybe around 7? I had spent the whole day eating alone, just hoping someone would join me to blow out the candles. Silence lingered on the other end of the line. "Mom, actually, Emily already made a reservation at the garden room. I didn't want to cancel last minute." I knew the place new, trendy, filled with luxury cars out front and people snapping photos of their meals. Dinner for 2 there probably cost over $400. I tried to sound cheerful. "But honey, I already made the cake. It's my birthday. Couldn't you stop by for a little while?" I heard Emily's voice in the background, sharp and impatient. "Tell your mom we'll stop by later, Jake," he sighed. "Mom will stop by. Come by after, okay? Just save us a slice." Later, always later. I hung up, staring at the perfect cake on the table, the pearl candles waiting to be lit, the embroidered cloth, 2 empty plates. I sat on the wicker chair on the porch, watching the sunset turn the sky pink and orange, beautiful but painful. I realized that for the 3 years since Jake had married Emily, I had been slowly pushed aside. Last Christmas, they went to her parents' house. On New Year's, they went on vacation without telling me. For Jake's birthday in January, I gave him $8,000 to help fix up their condo. He just said, "Thanks, Mom," and turned away to take a call. But nothing hurt as much as that day, the kind of pain that stings deep in your chest. They weren't coming. On my birthday, they had chosen oysters and champagne over their own mother. I sat alone with my handmade cake, the expensive candles, and a loneliness that sank into my bones. Then my phone buzzed. I opened it, still foolishly hoping. A text from Jake. But before reading it, I saw he had just posted a picture online, bright smile, champagne glass in hand, Emily beside him in a tight red dress. They looked radiant, happy. The caption read, "Perfect evening at the city's best restaurant. Perfect." While I blew out 72 candles alone, their night was perfect. I opened the text. "Mom, save us some cake. Emily wants to try it tomorrow." I read it 3 or 4 times. Each word felt like a knife. Save the cake. As if I were just a refrigerator in their lives, something to store what they wanted, when they wanted. Emily had never called, never said happy birthday, yet she decided when my cake could be eaten. I set the phone down, silence pressing in. I stood up and lit all 72 candles, singing softly to myself, "Happy birthday to you." My voice cracked. I blew out the candles, making no wish. I sat down in the kitchen chair, buried my face in my hands. Memories rushed in. Jake was only 7 when his father died of a heart attack. I was 38, widowed, unemployed, raising a child alone. I learned to sew from my neighbor. Linda started hemming pants for $5, then tailoring suits, dresses, even wedding gowns. For 30 years, I sat by that old sewing machine, working through countless nights, so my son would never go without. When he wanted to attend a private college, I sold the only gold ring my grandmother had left me to pay the tuition. He graduated, got a good job, met Emily at an office party. At first, she seemed sweet, polite, always smiling. Jake was smitten, his eyes lighting up whenever he mentioned her. 3 years ago, I even pitched in $12,000 from my retirement savings to help with their wedding. But after that, everything changed. Jake called less, visits grew shorter and more rushed, and Emily never had time for coffee. Last Christmas, they went to Colorado with her family, telling me only 2 days in advance. I spent the holidays watching old movies alone. For Jake's birthday, I gave him another $8,000 for home repairs. He hugged me briefly before stepping outside to answer his phone while Emily waited in the car. And now, on my birthday, the cake I baked with love, the candles I bought with care, the tablecloth I laid out with hope forgotten for champagne and luxury dining. I looked at that perfect, empty cake, and something inside me broke. Not anger, not resentment, clarity. I had spent 72 years serving, helping, waiting, but never being valued. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a bank, a storage room, someone always on standby. Looking at that lonely cake, I decided it ends here. I grabbed a pen and paper, my hand trembling but my writing firm. Every line I wrote was a quiet declaration of war against the invisibility I had accepted for so long. I placed the folded note beneath the cake, then went to my room and pulled out the navy blue suitcase. If they thought I would sit here forever, waiting to be remembered when convenient, they were wrong. By dawn, I knew exactly what I was going to do, and they had no idea what was coming. Do you know the moment you finally stop accepting being someone's second choice? I do. And what I did after that night would leave my son and his wife in utter shock. I rang their doorbell 3 times. Inside, I could hear laughter, but no one came to the door. A few minutes later, Jake texted, "Sorry, Mom, we're showering." Both of them, for over 30 minutes. I had always made excuses for them. They're young, they have their lives, I shouldn't intrude. But that night, sitting alone in the dark, I realized something. I wasn't a burden. I was invisible, and worse, I had allowed it to happen. I walked into the study once, my late husband Richard's room. The dark wooden desk still carried a faint trace of his cologne after all these years. I opened the drawer where we kept our important papers, the house deed, bank statements, the will. As I flipped through them, my breath caught. Jake believed this house was half his. I knew because 6 months earlier I had overheard him telling Emily, "We won't have to worry about a house later, it's practically ours already." But no, this house was solely in my name and always had been. Richard left everything to me. I never transferred ownership, never made any promises. Jake had been living in an illusion one Emily had clearly encouraged. I checked my bank statements, $380,000, plus the interest from selling my sewing business 10 years ago. Jake knew about this. I had mentioned it once, foolishly, when he complained about money troubles. I hadn't offered to lend anything, just shared, but after that, his attitude changed. He became sweeter, more attentive, but every gesture ended with a request. "Mom, could you lend me $2,000? I'll pay you back next month." Or, "Mom, Emily found this beautiful sofa, but it's a bit pricey. Could you help us out?" I pulled out my old ledger, where I wrote down every expense. March 2023, $15,000 for Emily's car down payment. She promised to repay within 6 months. Still waiting. July, $12,000 for so-called emergency repairs. But later I discovered they had gone on vacation to Cancun. The photos were everywhere online. From October onward, I sent $6,000 each month to help with expenses. I live alone and never spend more than $3,000. Why was I financing their lifestyle? Over $120,000 in less than 2 years and not a single cent repaid. I closed the notebook, leaning back in the chair. My head throbbed. I wasn't a mother, I was a vault. And Emily held the key. I looked at Richard's photo on the wall, him in his navy suit, that gentle smile that once steadied me on the hardest days. "Oh, Richard," I whispered to the frame. "I've been such a fool. I let our son become like this, but I won't let it go on." I picked up the phone and called the only person I still trusted, my cousin, Miriam. She lived in a small town 3 hours away, a widow like me, but free and peaceful. She answered, her voice still groggy. "Amy, what's wrong? It's the middle of the night. Miriam, I need to get out of here. Can I stay with you for a few days?" She paused, then her tone turned firm. "Of course, what happened?" "I'll explain when I get there. I just need to disappear for a while to think. Then come in the morning. My home's always open for you, no questions, no judgment." I hung up and took a deep breath. For the first time in 72 years, I was about to do something purely for myself. No permission, no warning, no apology. And when Jake and Emily returned to get their slice of cake, they would find much more than that. They would find the end of the woman who accepted scraps of affection and the beginning of the woman I should have been all along. When dawn broke, I began packing. I hadn't slept a minute, yet I felt strangely clear, as if every cell in my body knew this was necessary. I packed light, just a few outfits, a jacket, comfortable shoes. Then I opened the jewelry box and took out the red velvet case containing my mother's golden brooch. It was her favorite piece, worn only on special occasions, the only thing I kept after she passed. I opened it. The golden light shimmered under the first rays of morning. My fingers trembled as I touched its cool surface. So many times, I'd thought about giving it to Jake, believing he'd understand its sentimental value. But now I knew if I did, Emily would sell it for some designer purse or lavish dinner, and my mother's brooch would end up as a handful of bills in a stranger's hand. I placed the box carefully into my suitcase. It was mine, and only mine. I added an old photo album, Jake as a child, Richard and me on our wedding day. My grandmother smiling in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour. They weren't just pictures, they were proof that I had lived, loved, and built a family before being reduced to the provider. I went back to the study, gathered all the important documents, the house deed, the bank papers, the will that Jake thought he knew but he didn't. I packed them in a blue folder and tucked it deep in my suitcase. Then I went to the kitchen. The cake was still there, the glossy cherries on top of dark chocolate, the pearl candles beside it, the emerald tablecloth beneath. I took the note I had written in the night and read it once more, my handwriting still steady, decisive, despite my trembling hands. I folded the letter neatly and placed it under the cake plate. Then I walked to the fuse box and shut off the power. I turned off the water. I didn't want the house lit up as if I were still there waiting. If they came in, they'd be greeted by darkness and silence. I rolled my suitcase to the garage. My white Ford Fusion sat there, simple but reliable. I loaded my bags into the trunk, adjusted the mirror, and looked at the house one last time. No sadness, no fear, just peace. I started the engine and drove away. 3 hours on the road, the city gave way to open fields. Noise turned into quiet. When I arrived, Miriam was waiting on the porch, her silver hair pinned up neatly, a floral apron tied around her waist, a warm smile on her face. "Amy, you're here," she said, pulling me into a hug. The air smelled of fresh coffee and toasted bread. "Come inside. Coffee's ready. Tell me everything." We sat in her small kitchen, old wooden table, white lace curtains, a vase of yellow lilies by the window. It felt cozy, alive, so unlike my cold house in the city. I took a sip of coffee, and tears spilled down my cheeks. I told her everything, the forgotten birthday, the text about the cake, the photos online, the money never repaid, the feeling of being used but never loved. Miriam listened quietly. When I finished, she reached across the table, holding my hands. "Amy, do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "This is abuse, emotional and financial. You've become your son's bank." Her words hit hard, but they were true. "You're right," I whispered. "But I let it happen. Because you're a mother, and mothers love. But love doesn't mean letting yourself be hurt. If you keep giving without ever receiving, that's not love, it's exploitation." I stayed silent, staring into my cup. "So what should I do now?" I asked. "Now," she said softly, "you rest. Stay here as long as you need. Let them feel your absence. But Amy, don't rush back when they start crying or calling. Remember, before anything else, you need to learn to value yourself." I nodded. I turned off my phone, took out the battery, and left it to die. For the first time in decades, I could no longer be found. Later, Jake told me that around noon he and Emily went to my house. He said the house was dark, the switches and the water were off, and the cake was still on the table with the green tablecloth and the pearl-colored candles beside it. He found my folded note under the plate and that Emily read it aloud exactly as I had written it. Emily let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, please, Jake. She's doing this again. She's lonely. Probably went to that cousin of hers, what's her name? That uptight Miriam." But Jake didn't respond. His face had gone white. His eyes were fixed on the untouched cake, the embroidered tablecloth, the unlit candles. He sank into the chair, completely drained. "Jake?" Emily frowned. "Why are you just sitting there? Call her." Jake's fingers shook as he dialed. The phone rang, then went straight to voicemail. He called again. Then again. Still voicemail. She turned her phone off, he whispered. Emily sighed and threw her purse onto the chair. "Oh, for heaven's sake, this is ridiculous, Jake." According to Jake, Emily said I was making a scene over one dinner, and he admitted he told her that they had chosen lobster over his own mother's birthday. "Come on, Jake, you're being just like her now, too emotional, overreacting. Your mom's always like this, always clingy. We can't live our lives around her forever." "She's not clingy, Emily. She's alone." Jake shot up from his chair, running his hands through his hair, voice trembling with anger. "Do you have any idea how many times my mom has ever asked for anything? Never. Not once. All she wanted was 2 hours just to share a slice of cake. That's it." Emily folded her arms. "So now it's my fault? I'm the villain here? You were the one who said we didn't need to go, remember? You said we'd visit the next day." I just agreed. It's not my fault she decided to pull this stunt. Jake closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing, but inside him rose something worse than anger, guilt, heavy and suffocating. He looked around the dark, cold house, empty, just like the way he had made his mother feel. "I have to find her," he said, grabbing his phone. Jake called Miriam, and Miriam also told me she answered and informed him that I was safe with her and that he needed to respect my wish for space until I was ready to talk. Jake stood frozen, staring at his phone. Emily rolled her eyes. "See? She's with Miriam. Just another one of her dramas. Forget it, she'll be back in a few days." But Jake wasn't listening. He explained to me later that he went into my office and found the drawer empty. He said the house deed, the bank papers, and the will were no longer there because I had taken them with me. "Emily!" he shouted. She came in, annoyed. "What now?" Her papers all gone. Emily's face went pale, her mask of indifference slipping. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "She took them." "Over one dinner? That's insane." Jake turned to her, looking her straight in the eye. He realized the concern he thought he saw in Emily was actually greed. He saw the calculation behind her frown. "You're worried about the documents?" he asked slowly. "No, I'm worried about your mother. But Jake, we need to be realistic. She's almost 80. 72, he snapped. "Same difference. She's old, forgetful, could faint or something. We need to know where those papers are to keep things under control." "Why, Emily?" His voice dropped low, dangerous. Why do you need to know where my mother's documents are? To protect her. What if something happens? If something happens, I'm her son. I'll handle it. But we're married, Jake. What's yours is mine too. That one sentence was all it took for Jake to understand everything. He walked back to the table, picked up my note, and read it again slowly. Enjoy your slice of cake. I'll enjoy my self-respect. Self-respect, the very thing his mother had lost because of him, because of them, and he, blind and foolish, hadn't even noticed. Jake later admitted to me that he broke down crying in the house and couldn't stop. Emily stood frozen. Jake, stop. We can fix this. We'll go talk to her tomorrow. Get out, he said, not looking up. What? Get out, Emily. You're crazy. I'm not leaving you like this. Get out, he shouted. The sound echoed through the hollow house. Leave my mother's home before I say something I can't take back. Emily froze, then grabbed her purse angrily. You'll regret treating me like this, Jake. I've regretted plenty, Emily, but asking you to leave isn't one of them. Later, Jake told me the door slammed shut, and he sat, alone in the dark house, the untouched cake heavy on the table, like guilt pressing on his chest. As Jake later admitted to me, his pain had simmered for years before it finally exploded and destroyed what was left of his composure. He sat there for a long time, no light, no water, no life. The silence was suffocating. He picked up his phone and tried calling me voicemail. He texted, Mom, please answer. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry. Please give me a chance to make things right. No response. Mom, just tell me you're okay. Still silence. He lowered his head onto the table, breathing heavily. His tears had dried, but the pain kept burning. Jake said he opened the cabinet, where I keep my old bills, and found my light blue ledger. He read my entries, and that it shattered him to see what I had recorded. March 15th, 2023, lent Jake $15,000 for Emily's car down payment. He promised to pay back in 6 months. No interest because he's my son. Jake remembered the brand new silver Honda Civic. Emily had begged, I need a new car, Jake. The old one's falling apart. He had asked his mother for help. She had agreed instantly, and they never paid her back. Next page, July 12th, 2023. Jake called saying there was a serious water leak in the apartment, needed full bathroom repairs, sent $12,000 immediately. He promised to repay in 3 months. July 15th. Saw pictures online there at a luxury resort in Cancun. Not an emergency. A lie. My heart hurt, but I said nothing. I was afraid he'd drift away if I complained. Jake told me his stomach twisted when he remembered Cancun. Emily had said it was a can't-miss deal, flights and hotel included. We deserve a break, Jake. And he had agreed, forgetting that his mother had just wired $12,000, believing a lie. He turned another page, hands shaking. October 2023 through April 2025. Started sending $6,000 monthly to Jake. He said his salary wasn't enough, and Emily was unemployed. I live alone. Spend less than $3,000, so I can help. 19 months now, total $114,000. He never asks if I'm okay. He only asks for more. Jake leaned against the wall, dizzy, and that he knew I had helped but had never counted the cost. He had never realized she was draining her savings to support their lifestyle. According to Jake, Emily wasn't unemployed, she was a store manager, earning well, and he felt she preferred to lie and take advantage. He flipped to the last page. April 23rd, 2025. My birthday, 72 years old. Baked a cake using Grandma's recipe, called Jake and Emily, invited them to share it. Just 2 hours. Just one slice. They chose the garden room. I blew out my candles alone. Later got a message, save us some cake. Today I realized, something, I'm no longer a mother to my son. I'm just a convenience. I don't know how much longer I can bear this feeling. Jake dropped the notebook and collapsed onto the floor, sobbing violently, the kind of cry that tears at your throat and leaves you gasping. He had turned his mother into a walking wallet, an invisible woman remembered only when needed. He wept until he couldn't breathe. He found printed messages of a conversation between Emily and a friend, and he showed them to me, including the part where Emily called me old and clingy, and talked about the apartment and my house as if they were already hers. Jake read it again and again. When the old lady dies, Emily had said that about his mother. She was waiting for his mother to die. He was so sick with shame and guilt that he vomited in the bathroom. According to Jake, he called Emily, confronted her about the printed messages, told her it was over, and then hung up and blocked her number. He blocked her number and sank to the floor of the living room, wrapping his arms around his knees. Jake later confessed to me that he realized he had lost the only person who had ever truly loved him, and he described his regret as heavy as lead. But my story didn't end there, because while my son drowned in guilt, I was learning how to breathe again. While Jake, by his own account, later was consumed by remorse in the city, I sat on Miriam's porch, sipping coffee and eating a warm piece of cornbread, watching the green fields stretch to the horizon. The air was peaceful, the kind of peace that soothes rather than suffocates. It had been 5 days since I left home, 5 days without turning on my phone, without hearing apologies or excuses. 5 days entirely my own. Miriam let me stay in her small guest room, simple but cozy. A double bed with a hand-stitched quilt, white curtains dancing in the breeze, the faint scent of lavender in the sheets. From the window, I could see her apple tree heavy with fruit. In the mornings, birds sang a sound I had forgotten for years. That first night, I cried until I couldn't breathe. Miriam just held me, stroking my hair gently. "Cry, Amy," she whispered. "Cry for all the years you endured." The next morning my eyes were swollen, but my heart felt lighter. Miriam made coffee, cheesecake, and warm pastries. We sat in the kitchen, and I told her everything, not just about the birthday, but about the long years of being used. I talked about the loans that were never repaid, over $120,000 gone in less than 2 years. The short visits, the rushed conversations, the way Emily always spoke to me with impatience that made me feel like a burden. Miriam listened, then took my hand. "Amy, I need to say something you might not like. You have around $38,000 in savings, right?" I nodded. "Does Jake know that?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Then you're no longer his mother, Amy. You're an investment." Those words hit like a hammer, painful, but true. "Does Emily know too?" "I'm sure she does," Miriam said. "That explains everything. You've become a cash cow, Amy. And as long as there's milk, they'll keep milking." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "I let this happen." "Yes," Miriam said, "but not because you're foolish, because you're a mother. Every mother believes love means giving endlessly without expecting anything back. But, Amy, love that only flows one way isn't love, it's exploitation." She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You need help, Amy. There's no shame in that. You need to learn to value yourself, because if you don't, no one else will." The next day, I decided to see a therapist in town, Dr. Helena, around 50, short silver-streaked hair, red glasses, a kind smile. Her office was in an old house filled with plants and the scent of lavender. I sat on a beige chair, and for the first time in my life, told a stranger everything about Richard, my husband, who died too young, leaving me with our son. About the long nights sewing until exhaustion, so Jake never lacked anything. About the pride I felt when he graduated and married, and about the crushing loneliness, not from the absence of people, but from the absence of true presence. Dr. Helena listened, took notes, occasionally offering a sad smile. When I finished, she set her glasses down gently. "Amy, you've spent your whole life taking care of others and forgetting yourself. It's time to change that. First, you must understand that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-protection. If you don't do it, no one will." I nodded. "And second, you must rediscover who you are beyond being a mother. Who is Amy, aside from being Jake's mom?" I froze. I didn't have an answer. "Exactly," she said softly. "It's time to find out." I left her office with a heart that ached yet felt warm with hope. The next day, Miriam introduced me to her group of friends, extraordinary women, most widowed or divorced, all over 65, independent and strong. There was Mrs. Nuesa, 78, who had just returned from a solo trip to the mountains of Colorado. She showed me photos of waterfalls, trails, and sunsets glowing orange. "Amy," she said, "after my husband died, I lived in grief for 5 years. One morning I told myself, 'Niusa, you're still alive, so live.' I bought a backpack and left. Best decision I ever made." Then there was Mrs. Sita, 70, an artist preparing for her first solo exhibition. "I started painting at 65, she said. "It's never too late, Amy. You just have to begin." Talking to them opened something inside me. They didn't pity me, didn't judge me. They simply saw me as another woman among them. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to walk in the small-town park. The sky was clear, the breeze gentle. I wore white pants, a light blue blouse from a thrift store, and comfortable sneakers. Looking in the mirror, my long silver hair fell over my shoulders. I usually kept it tied up for convenience, but that morning I asked myself, how long has it been since I did something just for me? I stepped into a nearby salon. The hairdresser, Ivone, smiled. "Good morning. What are we doing today?" "I want to cut it short," I said firmly. "Something new, light and fresh." "It'll look great," she replied. And it did. My hair, cut to chin length, softly layered, full of natural volume. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked beautiful not for anyone else, but for me. I stopped by a store afterward and bought a few new things: 2 blouses, a floral skirt, and a navy blue dress. The total was $400, and I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in my life, I spent money on myself without feeling wasteful. That evening, Miriam and I sat on the porch. She smiled. "You look different, Amy." "I feel different," I said. "What about Jake?" "I'm not ready to talk to him. When I'm sure I won't accept pity anymore, I'll reach out." Miriam squeezed my hand. "You're on the right path." And I believed her. Some beginnings come late, but never too late. I was coming back to life. While I was learning to live again, my son was learning the harshest lesson of his life. 2 weeks passed, and Jake lived in the hell he had created. He called me every day, sent dozens of apologetic messages, but I didn't read them. My phone remained off. He came to Miriam's house 3 times. The first time, he knocked for 15 minutes, shouting my name, begging. I heard him from upstairs, my heart aching, but I didn't go down. Miriam stood at the door. "Your mother doesn't want to see you right now, Jake. Respect." "I need to apologize, to explain." "Then start by explaining to yourself. When she's ready, she'll reach out." He left, defeated. From upstairs I saw Miriam take the bouquet. Later, Miriam told me she said that I hadn't needed flowers, I had needed him when it still mattered. The third time, he just stood at the gate, eyes red. Then he turned and walked away. That night, I cried. To be a mother and watch your child suffer even when they deserve it is a pain that never feels right. But I didn't go back, because for the first time, I chose my own pain, not his. That's when Jake's life began to crumble. He called the bank and learned that I had removed his access and that any changes would require my direct consent. He had never truly needed that account, but my decision to revoke his access was a harsh wake-up call, the proof that I was no longer the silent woman who endured everything. He went to the land registry office for a copy of the deed and saw that it listed only my name as the owner. The house had never been his. It had never been ours. It was always mine. He walked out of the building in shock and sat in his car for an hour. Emily had said 1,000 times, "When your mom dies, at least we'll have a place to live." Jake believed her. He realized they had built their future around that supposed inheritance, but that inheritance never existed. Henry told me afterward that he had explained to Jake the house was solely mine and that verbal assurances had no legal effect, just as my savings remained under my sole control. Jake hung up, heart heavy. Everything he had believed was an illusion. Jake said when Emily found out the house wasn't in his name, she erupted. Jake described to me that the next 2 weeks were full of arguments with Emily, and he recounted her words about my house and their expectations. Jake looked at her, disgusted. "Do you hear yourself? You're wishing my mother dead." "I'm not wishing her dead. I'm being realistic. She's 72, Jake. Nobody lives forever." "Get out of my house," he shouted, shoving the chair aside. "Leave before I say something I'll regret." Emily froze, then stormed out, slamming the door. 3 days later, she texted, "I want a divorce. I'll take half." Jake didn't reply, he just blocked her. 3 blind years had finally ended. Emily had never loved him, only what he could inherit. And when she realized there was nothing to inherit, she vanished. 3 weeks after I left home, on a Sunday morning, Jake appeared at Miriam's gate. This time, he didn't knock or cry, he just stood there holding an envelope. Miriam came upstairs. "Amy, your son's here. He brought a letter. He only asks that I give it to you, no reply needed." I looked out the window. Jake was thin, hollow-eyed, unshaven, looking 10 years older. I didn't feel pity, only pain, but I didn't change my mind. Miriam handed me the letter without a word. I sat on the bed and opened it. His handwriting trembled, blurred by tears. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if I deserve for you to. But I have to try. I saw your notebook. I read Emily's messages, and for the first time in my life, I understand how blind I've been. You raised me alone, worked nights so I never lacked anything, gave me education, love, and dignity, and I repaid you with neglect. I chose fancy dinners over 2 hours at your table, lies over honesty. A woman who disrespected you over the only person who ever truly loved me. I have no excuses. I was cowardly, selfish, and blind. I left Emily, she showed her true self, cold, greedy, manipulative. I let her into your life, let her hurt you. That's my greatest failure. Mom, I'm not asking for forgiveness, I know I don't deserve it. I only ask for one chance to prove I can change, that I can be the son you deserve. I understand if you don't want to see me, if you want to forget me. But please, just let me know you're safe. I love you, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." Jake, I folded the letter slowly, placed it on the nightstand, and cried, not because I intended to forgive him, but because it was what I needed to hear. Not excuses, but recognition. Yet I wasn't ready to respond. Before forgiving my son, I had to learn to forgive myself, and that takes time. Some forgiveness must wait, and some letters hurt more than silence. Jake had awakened, and I was learning to walk again on my own. A month passed. 30 days away from home, from my son, from old habits, 30 days that changed me more than the last 10 years. I was no longer the woman who left in tears. In the mirror, my eyes looked different. There was a light I thought I had lost. Self-respect. Dr. Helena helped me understand that I had spent my life confusing love with sacrifice, that being a mother didn't mean surrendering, that caring didn't mean erasing myself, and that it's never too late to stand tall again. One Thursday morning, as Miriam and I drank coffee on the porch, I said, "I'm going back." Miriam paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes. But I'm not going back to continue. I'm going back to end it properly." She smiled proudly. "Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to face it alone." By Friday afternoon, we arrived at the house. Miriam drove, and Mr. Henry came along. I wanted him there as a witness and for legal support. When I opened the door, everything was just as I had left it. The cake still on the table, now covered in green mold, the pearl-colored candles beside it, the green tablecloth stained and faded. No one had cleaned, no one had touched a thing. Jake must have been too afraid to step inside. I flipped the breaker on, cold light flooding the room. I opened the windows, damp air and mold rushed out. I took a deep breath. It was time. I turned on my phone and texted Jake, "I'm home. Come see me at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Just you know, Emily." The reply came almost instantly. "Thank God. I'll be there. I've left Emily. I promise I'll come alone." Thank you for giving me this chance." I didn't respond. The next morning, exactly at 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Jake stood there thin, exhausted, eyes red, unshaven, hands trembling. When he saw me, tears filled his eyes. "Mom, come in," I said evenly. "Someone's waiting." He walked in and froze when he saw Miriam and Henry sitting in the living room. "Mom, what's going on?" "Sit down, Jake." He sat, looking like a child about to be scolded by a teacher. I sat across from him, with Miriam and Henry on each side. It felt like a small courtroom. I wanted my son to listen, not interrupt, not justify. I placed the blue notebook on the table. "You've seen this already, haven't you?" Jake nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, I read it all." "Then do you know how much you and that woman took from me? Not just money, but respect, peace, and dignity." "Mom, I listen first." "Speak later." Tears rolled down his face. I took a deep breath and began. "I spent 34 years raising you alone, working until my hands bled so you could have everything: education, clothes, food, and pride. When your father died, I could have given up. I could have sent you to live with your grandmother. But I didn't, because I loved you. When you grew up, got a job, and married, I thought I had fulfilled my purpose. But I was wrong. You married a woman who valued money more than family, a woman who called me a clingy old lady, a woman who waited for me to die just to take my house." I threw the printed messages onto the table. "I knew everything, Jake. I knew even before you did. A kind acquaintance sent them to me out of pity. And I stayed silent because I was afraid to lose you, afraid that if I spoke up, you'd choose her." Jake buried his face in his hands, sobbing. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You already chose," I said. "You chose her on my birthday. When I asked for only 2 hours, you chose lobster and champagne instead. You texted, 'Save me a slice,' as if I were a refrigerator. I let you do it because I was scared of losing you, but over this past month, I've realized something: I lost you a long time ago. I just refused to accept it." Silence filled the room. Miriam squeezed my hand for strength. I continued, "But I was wrong too. I was wrong for raising you without teaching you how to love back. I gave too much and forgot that love needs to flow both ways. Part of the fault is mine, I accept that. But now, I'm fixing it. And you have to fix it too." I took out a folder and opened it. "This is a record of everything you've asked me for over the past 2 years. The total is $141,000. Jake's eyes widened. "That much?" "Yes, and you haven't paid back a single cent. But I don't want all of it, just half. $70,000. Paid in installments." "Mom, are you asking me to pay you back?" "Yes, because I'm not a bank. I'm your mother. And mothers deserve respect, not exploitation." Henry handed him a document. "I've prepared a contract, $70,000, to be paid over 24 months, $3,000 each month, no interest. If you agree, sign here." Jake stared at the paper, tears dripping onto it, speechless. "I'll pay it all, Mom. I promise. I'll pay every penny." "Good. Sign it." Jake picked up the pen, his hand trembling as he wrote his name. I pulled out another folder. "This is my will. You need to understand something. The house is under my name, always has been, and it will stay that way until I'm gone. When I die, it will be yours, but because I choose to give it, not out of obligation. Understand?" Jake swallowed and nodded. "Yes, Mom, I understand. One more thing," I said slowly. "I'm going to travel. I'll use the money I've saved all my life to visit the places I've always dreamed of. I want to see the ocean, visit new cities, enjoy life. And I don't want you or anyone else to make me feel guilty about it. That money is mine. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mom. I understand." He was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but do you think someday you could forgive me?" I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once begged for another glass of milk, the same eyes that sparkled on his graduation day. "Forgive you?" I said. Jake, I will never forget what you did. But forgiveness, that depends on you. If you truly change, if you treat me as your mother and not as your wallet, if you're there when I need you, not just when you need me, then maybe, over time, we can heal. He stood up hesitantly. Can I hug you? I was silent for a few seconds, then nodded and opened my arms. He held me tightly, crying like a child. I cried too. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing not to carry the burden anymore. Some hugs hurt and heal at the same time, and those are the ones that matter. From that day on, things changed, not only between my son and me, but also within myself. 3 months later, I sat in a folding chair on a Florida beach, my feet buried in soft white sand, warm sunlight on my face, an open book resting on my lap. The sea stretched endlessly before me, blue and calm, waves gently rolling in, the breeze carrying the scent of salt. Miriam sat beside me, wearing a straw hat and sipping coconut water. "Amy, you look like you're thinking too much," she said. I smiled. "I'm just thinking how quickly life changes when you finally let it." Miriam laughed. "You've finally learned." And she was right, I had. 3 months after that confrontation, everything was different. Jake kept his word. On the 5th of every month, he transferred exactly $3,000 to my account, never late, never with an excuse. He even worked weekends to make sure the payments were on time. But more than money, he changed as a person. He called not to ask for anything, but simply to check on me. "How are you today, Mom? What have you been up to? Do you need anything?" And when I said no, he just listened. In that silence, for the first time, I felt his true presence. Every week, Jake came over with lunch, fixed a few things around the house, sat down to talk for an hour or two without looking at the clock, without checking his phone. Slowly, the wound began to heal. It would never disappear, but it no longer hurt as much. According to Henry's case notes that he shared with me, Emily sued. Henry presented the messages and financial records, along with a co-worker's testimony, and the judge denied her claim and warned her against filing false claims. Henry told me Emily left the courtroom red-faced, and Jake blocked her calls. She came to my door, crying, begging me to speak on her behalf. I said only one thing. "Emily, you once wished I were dead so you could take my house. I don't speak to people who wish me into the grave." Then I closed the door. I did not witness what happened to Emily afterward. Neighbors told me she moved back with her mother, was fired for missing too many days, and that her lover left when he learned she was broke and jobless. Sometimes, life has its own kind of justice. But the best part wasn't her downfall, it was my rise. For the first 2 months after that confrontation, I went to therapy every week with Dr. Helena. We talked about self-worth, boundaries, and forgiveness, not the kind that's said out loud, but the kind that truly sets you free. One day she asked, "Amy, what's something you've always wanted to do but never dared?" I thought for a moment, then said, "Travel. See the ocean. Go hiking. Watch the sunset somewhere far away." "And why haven't you?" "I always thought it was selfish. I needed to save, just in case something happened." She smiled. "And have you realized that something is happening right now? Life is passing, and you haven't lived it." I walked out of her office and bought a plane ticket that same day. Florida, 7 days, beachfront hotel, all-inclusive. When I told Jake, he smiled genuinely. "You deserve it, Mom. Go." And I did. Florida was just the beginning. Later, I joined Miriam's friends on a trip to Colorado hiking mountains, soaking in hot springs, watching sunsets from rocky peaks. At 72, I climbed hills, crossed streams, took photos, and laughed like a young woman. I went on to California, Arizona, then Hawaii. In 6 months, I spent nearly $80,000 on those trips, and not once did I feel guilty. I had worked for 30 years to earn that money, and now, at last, I was using it to buy freedom. Sitting on the beach, surrounded by Miriam and her friends laughing beside me, I thought about everything. The birthday cake from that night, the unlit candles, the woman I once was small, quiet, accepting of disrespect. I wasn't her anymore. Now I'm Amy, 73 years old, with short silver hair, wearing a navy blue dress, tanned skin, and simple sandals. I'm the woman who can travel alone, set boundaries, reclaim what's hers, and love without erasing herself. My phone buzzed a message from Jake. "Mom, I just sent 3,000. I miss you. When are you coming home?" I smiled and typed back, "Next week. And bring lunch, I want to hear about your real life." He replied immediately, "I'll bring it. I love you." "I love you too, Jake." I put my phone away and took a deep breath. The breeze brushed my hair. Miriam asked, "You okay, Amy?" "I'm more than okay," I said. And it was true, I was better than ever. Now, when people ask me, "Amy, have you truly forgiven your son?" I answer, yes. But I didn't go back to who I was. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past, it means moving forward without the weight. I forgave Jake, but I didn't lose the woman I've become. And that woman, no one can take her away. The birthday cake was thrown out after 3 days, moldy and ruined, no longer edible. But one thing didn't spoil me. I bloomed. After 72 years of living in the background, I finally chose to be the main character in my own life. Today, at 73, I can say with certainty, this is the best chapter of my life. Because dignity has no age, new beginnings have no expiration, and it's never too late to choose yourself. That cake may have spoiled, but I came back to life. I closed my book, stood up, and walked toward the ocean. The cool water touched my feet as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. I smiled, because after all these years, I was no longer waiting for crumbs. I was savoring the feast, and it was beautiful. And what about you? Have you ever had to learn to love yourself again after being hurt by those you loved most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd truly love to hear your story. And if you believe everyone deserves a new beginning, stay with me, so we can keep walking through stories of courage, letting go, and learning to live fully again.